let's just talk about the people that have gone through this, right? So you mentioned that, after, you're going through this process, you have to learn to reparent that inner child, right? Who was kind of taught to, like suppress their emotions, doubt their own reality, and just like constantly seek external validation, right? So how does a person learn to reparent themselves in this regard?
It's tough because you haven't been shown it.
Yeah.
Well, not completely. You might have been shown it very intermittently, but not enough. So learning to reparent yourself, or learning to basically from zero parent yourself, means you may need to find better role models and guidance outside of your real parent. Well, maybe start by noticing that you're treating yourself the way your defensive parents has treated you. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but we very often internalize all those critical pattern. Like, do you dismiss your own feelings? Do you always tell yourself that you are overreacting? Do you basically suppress yourself and shoot yourself down? Yeah, so remember that that's their voice, not yours. Although if it has been very ingrained, it may sound like your own voice. Start very
Hmm.
small, when you feel something, again, pause, slow down, acknowledge it. And sorry, this sounds a bit like ChatGPT these days, because they always say, "Oh, you're feeling this," and that's valid in the
Yeah.
sense that you
Yeah.
feel that
I
way.
know.
I
I
know
know.
it's
It's
horrible, isn't
funny.
it? It
Yeah.
always start with
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
well, the reason they do is because there is some
Empathy.
validity to that. Yeah, I know.
Hmm.
Okay, let's not do it the ChatGPT way, but do it in a
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
real way. Like really say that to yourself. Okay, this makes sense. I'm not judging myself for this. Not judging myself
Hmm.
for this, and strategically, intentionally surround yourself with people who treat you the way that is different, that you deserve to be treated, and let their care and respect slowly rewire what you expect from interactions. It's slow work, but it's important.
Hmm.
It's going to be challenging. It's a bit like learning a new language, teaching yourself a new language that you were never taught, but you can certainly learn it as people do. So yeah,
Hmm.
notice your inner dialogue, practice better new dialogue to replace it, set reminders all around you, and pay attention to your
Hmm.
needs if your needs were not attended to, the ones that you're trying to suppress, trying to push through, you know, could be physical, could be emotional. Maybe you are used to pushing through even when you need rest, not celebrating small wins. I mean, very often people find it helpful to imagine what you would do to a lovely child or your pet. Any I say small creatures or figure, but it could be anything. It doesn't have to be small. It could be how you would treat your
Hmm.
loving partner. Yeah. Something people find powerful, but I think could be triggering, is to visualize your inner child.
Hmm.
If you find you're using yourself a bit triggering and not easy, picture again someone you love, but picture yourself as at an age where you really needed support, and ask yourself, what does that child needed to hear? What do they need to feel? And imagine
Hmm.
giving them that. Even create a mental picture or do some visualization. What they have found to be quite interesting is when you give yourself an imaginary exercise. That's why therapists sometimes do this, and they lead you down a visualization of, talking to your inner child, giving them an embrace, and imagine receiving it. That could be
Hmm.
powerful because your brain doesn't actually know the difference. Like your brain actually would believe that it has actually happened. So that is why it is actually effective in rewiring your experience. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So pretty much, as you mentioned, it comes down to like looking at your main tendencies and then changing your dialogue that isn't helping you, on the
Mm,
inside, right? And then
mm,
surround yourself with a healthier environment, which again, the more you do that, the more naturally your dialogue changes, right? So like you're not, because like just I guess you know with like osmosis, like you just like automatically start to change because of your environment, right? And then you also talked about, visualizing your younger self and giving that kid what it really needed, right? Now something you also mentioned was better role models, right? So when it comes down to a role model, again, for this specific type of a
mm.
situation, what should you look for, if you're looking for a
Yeah,
healthier role model? Yeah.
that is a really interesting question. Um, Well, I can answer something quite generic, like someone supportive and wouldn't put you down, give you a loving experience. But I am just thinking about more pointedly to the topic that we're talking about, pertinent to the defensive parents. Very often, you see children of defensive parents losing their voice, where they lose the capacity to stand up for their needs. They always feel they're in the wrong. You may see things like, I don't know, not standing up to the superior, or getting bullied in the workplace, being taken advantage of, just not knowing how to fight for their rights or have a voice, or to speak up their needs because of the upbringing they had. And so it's actually could be potentially quite useful to find a role model that models these behavior for you. Someone who healthily and reasonably would champion you to re-own your voice and express yourself, and model that in a healthy way. So that is tricky because you're talking about someone potentially have a stronger personality or can be quite assertive. But the trick here is that they are not doing it the way your parents does. So they're doing it in a
Mm-hmm.
healthy, mature way rather than just being very strong in order to get their needs met, if that makes sense. It's more like
Mm-hmm.
a mature way of getting your needs met that could be useful. And another interesting piece may be gender. It depends on the gender role of your parents, and how that may have affected your relate. Because that often does the thing, it's not direct, and that every case is different. But sometimes it's worth reflecting on whether or not the way your parents is affects the way you view or authority figure in the same gender in the world, or your own
Mm-hmm.
relationship to that gender. And when we try and find a role model, you may intentionally find someone who is of the same gender, but then give you a more curative experience this time, if that makes sense. Like,
Got
if you
it.
had a very
Mm-hmm.
violent father stereotype, all your life, then maybe you really lack the sense of safety around an older male figure. And maybe it could be quite curative if you can find a healthy father figure and give yourself a corrective experience that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only problem is like that, like you have to be really careful when you do that, right? Because I mean, I guess people that prey on individuals, they look for what you're missing. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? They look for what you're missing, and then they kind of like try and capitalize on that, right? But
yeah,
that is important though, because like, you didn't get it, right? So you have to get that healthy dose, from somewhere. Obviously, you can try and do it yourself, but it's like we're humans. We need other people, right? So
yeah.
yeah, as you mentioned, it seems like the most important thing is to find someone that does encourage you to
Mm,
truly be yourself, and then like just fully find a way um to like integrate your personality into life, in like
mm.
whatever way that means for you. Now when it
Authentically,
comes
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Now when it comes down to role models, like does it have to be in person, or can it be through books, you know
Oh, yeah,
virtual sources, stuff
absolutely.
like that? Mm-hmm.
Virtual sources are great. Virtual sources, historical figures,
Yeah,
online things,
yeah, historical
all
figures are
sorts,
great. Yeah.
all sorts. Even a cartoon
Mm-hmm.
character, if that helps.
Uh-huh.
It could be really powerful.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because I mean, you know it can be kind of hard sometimes, right, to find someone in person who can kind of meet those standards. But online, like especially nowadays, you have access to pretty much everything, right? Um, Now, if someone does want to find somebody in person outside of like going to therapy, is there any other place that you would recommend that they go and look for, or is it just, I guess?
Mm. No, I really don't have any
Hmm.
generic
Yeah,
recipe. That could be anywhere. You could have met them in an intellectual community, a group that it can
yeah,
be anywhere. But like you said, yes, be careful because sometimes we do have the tendency to fall back into being attracted to the people who would be the worst for us. I mean, it's almost
yeah,
cliche now, but we see this a lot in romantic relationship. We somehow fall back into the same type of people that are not very good for us because of that
yeah,
sense of familiarity. Something about it feels eerily right, or it could even feel like an infatuation or attraction, when actually it is something quite toxic, a trauma bond underlying it. So yeah, you're very right to have flagged that up. So no matter where it is, be it secular, religious, or just intellectual. It's not really about the setting, but about how sharp you are in your own radar and self awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, like that also comes down to experience too, right? Like the more you interact with people, and then I get again, if you have, a high level of self awareness, and then again, if you become really comfortable, with that self awareness, it becomes quite easy to kind of figure out who doesn't have the best intentions, when they're dealing with you, right? So like, that's really
Yeah.
important because people fall into that trap all the time, because like that's the number one thing, right? Give someone what they don't need, and then like they become fully dependent on you. That's not the best place to be. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
You learn to spot the red flag earlier, hopefully.
God, yeah. And then as you mentioned, going to like support groups, like there's many of those actually. If you go online, you can find many support groups that can help people again, have guidance if they need be. Right? Okay.